We have everybody in attendance except Commissioner Williams. So if you're okay, we'll go ahead and call this workshop to order at 10:03 a.m. Central Time. Do we need to do a roll call since we know everybody's here except Commissioner Williams? Amber?
I don't think so. I'm happy to do one if you'd like me to.
Okay. I'm good with it. Okay. We can ask for an excused absence for Commissioner Williams. I'd like to wait a little bit just in case he has trouble logging in, if that's okay with everybody.
And if nobody has checked in with him, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I'll do that now.
Okay. While you're doing that, can we go ahead and go to agenda item number 3?
Yes.
Okay, and I will turn it over to General Counsel Vanessa Burgess.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to just do a couple of housekeeping things before we start number 3, which I know everyone's very excited for. So just as a reminder, it's better if you can mute during the meeting when you're not actively speaking, just to eliminate background noise. There is the raise hand feature. Depending on which version of Teams you have, it's either on your toolbar in the middle of your screen or it's up towards the top. For some of us, it's changed. So you can use that raise hand function. And then also we just encourage you to not use the chat unless you're having technical issues and you need help with them. And that's just for open meeting purposes. We're recording everything and the chat is not something that we can record. So that raise hand function is pretty good. And then you can also just feel free to speak up. Okay, so for agenda item number 3, due to the nature of this workshop being virtual, we didn't think it made sense to go through that entire guidebook. But I went ahead and sent that out to you guys roughly 10 days ago and asked for any questions or anything that you wanted to highlight. I have a couple of things I'm going to highlight. There was one request, excuse me, to go over some of the new stuff that's in there, and so I will cover that. You'll also see in some of the presentations that we're going to do after this, some of the finance presentations and the admin penalties, things like that. A lot of that stuff that's in the guide will be covered. It'll just be covered in a more hopefully interactive way than me just really going through that guidebook, which I know you guys received training on last year as well, and it's not significantly different. Some of the key items in there that I think really merit some study is anything on open meetings, which, as you guys know, the issue that we have there is, you know, we never want an inadvertent quorum, right? We don't want, for this group, it's anything that's going to be over 4. Once we get there, you have a situation where you have a majority talking about state business and you don't have a properly posted and announced open meeting. That's one that seems pretty easy to follow. I think the issue can come up when you have different people chatting. So if Commissioner A is talking to Commissioner B and C about official business, and then Commissioner C goes and talks to D and E and F about the same thing, and then comes back and says, oh, well, I was talking to them and they think this. Those are the kind of conversations that we want to avoid. And from everything I've seen with this commission and the questions I get, everyone seems really well briefed on this topic. You are always welcome to email me with questions that you have, and I see that you do. I will get questions that are like, hey, I'm going to be at this thing and I think there will be other commissioners present, or hey, I'm on the selection committee, can I reach out to other commissioners to ask them questions about some applicants? And that's really great. You can always come to me or to Abby with any of those questions that you have on open meetings, public information, anything like that. So please feel free to do that with me at any time. And I already see it a lot, and I appreciate it. It's really helpful. With 9, getting to a quorum takes a little more work, but I really think that sort of that walking quorum issue where you can have multiple conversations going around and being reported back is where I see the most for potential vulnerability with this this size of a commission. The other topic, unless does anybody have any specific questions on that? There's a whole summary in the guide. I didn't think to go through it, but you guys feel good about that? Yes. Okay. The other topic there's a couple of new things in there. You'll see there's a link to the governor's office and different initiatives that they've got going on. And I recommend you click on that link and just kind of go through what's going on over there and what they're looking at doing. One of the topics that you'll see in that link that is going to be relevant to tomorrow's meeting, and I think just generally speaking as we move forward as a licensing agency, is this initiative to reduce barriers to entry for licenses, right? And you're going to see this tomorrow. The Broker Responsibility Working Group has been meeting, and they've been tasked with looking at a few different items, and they're going to bring forth recommendations tomorrow. And one of the things that they're looking for is they're looking at TREC's education and experience requirements for brokers. And specifically, they're looking at, okay, what are Texas's education requirements and experience requirements, and how do they compare to other states? And is there a mechanism for, because, I mean, let me say this, Texas has some of the highest education requirements out there, right? Is there a way to balance that out a little bit so that somebody can come in and meet requirements a little bit faster? Is there a way for people who are in Texas right now to get in faster? I think it's something around 900 hours at the moment for education. And so what that group has looked at is they've looked at, okay, what can we do to lower some of the education requirements, but perhaps in turn increase some of the experience requirements. And there's just been a lot of conversation, and there's going to be an entire report on that, but I want you to know that they are really being driven by a letter that the governor sent, I believe it was last year, asking all agencies to look into this topic. And it's not to make it a free pass, it's to see how can we reduce some of the barriers to entry but still maintain, you know, a licensing process that has integrity and that protects the consumers. So I mentioned that because we've talked to that group a lot about this governor's letter. It steered them in the direction that they're going to propose. They're also looking at the issue of military spouse, substantial equivalent definition, which the chair will get into tomorrow in her report. But you know that if we have military spouses coming in who are going to be stationed in Texas, there's a requirement. Well, we can issue them a license. That's how we would do it. They can practice so long as they come from a state that meets this substantially equivalent definition. And in the past, the thought has been, you know, what is substantially equivalent, right? And it's hard when you look at Texas because the requirements are really high. But there's also, I can see from this group, a really deep desire to keep the integrity of the profession. So they've been looking at that, and that's a small group of people. But that's also part of the governor's initiative for us. And so I just bring this up to give you a little bit of a preview and to encourage you to click on that link that's in the guidebook and review that governor's letter to licensing agencies. When you get that recommendation tomorrow, it is a recommendation. If the commission decides to go forward with those recommendations. Some are rule changes, some are legislative changes that would need to be made depending on the direction you want to go. So you won't, unlike broker lawyer, or even sometimes the rule proposals you get out of ESAC, you don't have to vote on this topic. It's a recommendation, and the thought is that when Tony presents his legislative initiatives, which he's going to give you a preview of today, any sort of action on that can be encapsulated under that item. But it is a time for discussion of these topics, which I know, just having talked to some of you, it's on your minds too. And I'm just tying that back again to that governor's letter, because that is the direction that we've been given as an agency, and that we spoke with in depth with the Broker Responsibility Working Group. And then Commissioner Miller, did you have your hand raised? No? Okay. If you do, just raise it again. I thought I saw it. And then finally, what you'll see in the guidebook that I think should be really helpful to anyone who's trying to reach anyone is a revised org chart. And it's a lot cleaner, in my opinion. And so that should be really helpful to you if you're ever trying to reach out to someone, trying to figure out who sits where and where to go to. And again, if there's anything in here where you had specific questions you want to go over in more detail, you can feel free to ask me now. You can also feel free to just, I'm saying this very generously because I recognize that I will not be the one to answer it if you ask me soon, but you can send it to Abby and me, and we can go through anything in that guidebook that you want to highlight. And then I do see one hand raised, although I don't know how to, I can't tell who it is.
It's Jan Miller.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Are we going to also then relax geographic competency if you want us to open it up, the licensure, open it up to especially military spouses? And I've been on all those task forces for years and years and years, and it was the geographic competence requirement that closed the door as far as licensing in for TREC.
Interesting. So that is not, oh, Chelsea, do you have something?
Well, just a little thought on it, not truly an answer, but with military spouses, they're still required to comply with all of our rules. So they would have to maintain that competency through likely the help of others, right? Somehow. That's a little Pollyanna, but that's the balance we have here. Vanessa?
Well, I'll say a couple of things. One is we have a statutory requirement in place for military spouse, where if somebody is a military spouse, they get transferred in to their husband or wife to serve in the state, then we need to recognize their ability to practice. We would issue a license because that helps us to track everything. It helps them to get into all of the various systems, as I understand it. It's that substantially equivalent definition. And this is a conversation that you guys can have tomorrow, but you'll see in the definition of substantially equivalent, I don't know that this quite gets you to geographic competency. The thought is to have some required Texas courses. And so because we're at, I think it's like 936 hours, the thought is to reduce, and I might be switching them, but to reduce we'll get a measurement of 50% or greater, but with the requirement that you take these, I think it's 4 classes for a broker, 2 classes for a sales agent that are Texas specific. And they're the ones that are currently required right now. But I can't speak to that as intelligently as I think the chair can of that committee, and I don't want to take her presentation. But I think you can ask those questions tomorrow. I mean, that's the conversation to have, right? And if you want to task that group with looking into geographic competency, all of those things, that's the conversation that you can have tomorrow. And and look forward to, especially since you don't have to vote on the recommendation. You don't just have to accept it. You can take that recommendation and task your executive committee and staff with further developing it and seeing where it wants to head. And it's going to come up to how legislative session works also this session, something that Tony's going to cover in a little bit. I know that may not be the answer you want, but I think that conversation can be had for sure. Do you have something else?
Yeah, it seems like that conversation has been had ever since the requirement for geographic competency, and I've sat through it several times. So is anybody going to address the fact that the legislature needs to either take off geographic competency, which I'm not necessarily advising, or understand that you can't teach a class on Texas and expect geographic competency? It's impossible. I mean, I've been here, I'm covering 19 counties right now. That's impossible. Just saying.
No, I think that's the conversation. And we can do that tomorrow and keep going with it, because I know that broker responsibility group's going to keep going. Chair, I think your hand is raised.
Yeah, just to follow up on Commissioner Miller, I look at geographical competency almost like the minimum standards, minimum services. I think even if we do make it easier to get a broker's license, more experience, less hours, military spouses, I think geographical competency is one of the factors that needs to stay, just like minimum services. I mean, sure, you can get your license, but you're still required to have geographical competency. And I think that's determined by the sponsoring broker as far as geographical competency is. But I don't see that necessarily needing to change.
Well, like I said, this is not, this is probably better addressed tomorrow. I wanted to give you guys, just for purposes of what we have noticed on the agenda, I wanted to give you guys the heads up though, of what you can expect with that presentation and where it's rooted. It's really rooted in that governor's initiative. And so if you'll look in your training guide, you can see the link to those initiatives. I can resend, in fact, I will today, I will send you guys all a copy of that letter. You've seen it, I'm sure you've seen it before, but I'll go ahead and resend it, and then that's the conversation. I don't think that broker responsibility working group is in any way done discussing any of these topics. They are fired up about it, so I think that's a really good place to, you know, give them further charges and see where they head. Mm-hmm.
Who's pushing them on this? Who's pushing the broker responsibility group? Because this came up big time from Sunset. And again, TREC has addressed it, I thought, several times. So why does it keep coming back up? Is it same Sunset pressure? Okay, we got that, but why do they keep bringing it up and not accept the fact that TREC's going to stand firm on geographic competency, so no military spouses can just walk in and be competent? I'm sorry, and we can move on. I don't want to take our time.
I want to answer your question, but I know that we don't really have a good answer on this. And what you're identifying has been the same. I mean, like you say, we've discussed it and hasn't been a satisfying answer, right? But I think we staff are pushing this some, and I'm saying that just so that's clear. But we're doing so because of that governor's letter. So, but if this group as a body says no more, we can't go any further, or we've gone too far, staff of course will back off. It's just because it's really just that letter. I mean, that's really the push from staff. So I wanted to make that clear so that you knew that we weren't trying to act out of our own wishes, but just trying to work within that directive. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Scott, I can turn it back over to you, and then I think we have maybe two other hand, no, maybe just one other hand raised, Commissioner Stevens. Okay, Commissioner Stevens, you didn't have anything? You are muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Yes. Perhaps this can help answer some of the questions on Jan. Some of the things that have made Texas a great place in, like, to come and invest and be considered one of the best states in the nation has been to regulate only what is necessary to allow industries to grow. And I don't remember, but I mean, just recently, perhaps 2 or 3 years ago, I'd heard, and I may be wrong on how many years, that Texas was, I think, the most regulated state in the United States when it came to allowing others to come in and serve. And perhaps, and I don't want to repeat some of these things, and that's why I was thinking, I don't want to really get into it. I think it's probably best if we talk about it on some of this stuff tomorrow, so I don't want to use up a lot of this stuff. But I just, perhaps that will help, Jan, on some of the things that, and I will just stop right there, and I think, I mean, on my end, I'll continue tomorrow, but it's not, perhaps it was before your time, but it has been brought up before, and I am one of those people who did. I hope it helps answer that. But not this time. It was being brought way before before sunset. That's all I have. Thank you.
And I'm going to turn it back over to the chair. Like I said, this is the conversation that's on the agenda for tomorrow. I just wanted to give you guys the heads up on where it fits into that annual training and what we've been looking at. So it sounds like it's a conversation you guys want to have, and it's up there tomorrow to be had on that agenda.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Vanessa. And like she said, we'll have that discussion tomorrow. This is not something we have to vote up or down. This is discussion tomorrow, and I think the easiest way to get from 0 to 6 is to have the discussion. So agenda item number 4, discussion of regarding annual reports, including the fiscal 19 and 20. I'm going to have Renata Williams, Chief Financial Officer. She will present.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Okay. All right, so today we're looking at the HUB reporting. TREC has demonstrated its consistent commitment to the HUB program with a dedicated and diverse HUB coordinator and procurement team. The team consistently makes good faith efforts to promote HUB participation by utilizing HUBs for non-competitive spot purchases of $5,000 or less whenever possible, soliciting a minimum of 3 bids from certified HUBs. In addition, the procurement team assists vendors who qualify as HUBs to become HUB certified, encourage non-HUBs to subcontract with certified HUBs, and continuously strive to maintain positive working relationships. The results in our efforts can be seen in the Consolidated HUB Comparison Report for 2019 and 2020. The chart shows that the agency's HUB participation has consistently exceeded 30% and in many instances exceed 50% HUB participation. TREC exceeded the state goal in both 2019 and 2020 for HUB purchases of professional services, other services, and commodity purchases. State agency participation is required and is identified in 34 TAC section 20.281. And let's see, we will continue to seek out opportunities to do business with historically underutilized businesses. This initiative is also a passion of Senator Royce West, and we recently responded to a request for information from his office pertaining to our historical hub utilization and our goals for increasing our participation in the hub program. Are there any questions related to our consolidated hub report? Okay, hearing none. We go on to the next item, which is the FY20 self-directed semi-independent agency report. So page 4, please. Okay, thank you. The SDSI report was submitted as required by statute prior to the deadline, which was November the 1st. The 62-page SDSI report contains data on the salary of all agency personnel, the total amount of per diem expenses and travel expenses paid for each commission member, board member, and committee member. The report includes an excerpt from our 2021 through 2025 strategic plan, the 2021 budget, portions of our annual financial report detailing all revenues and expenses, and trend performance data. Key performance indicators across our various divisions are also included in the report for fiscal years 2016 through 2020. This includes items such as our number of FTEs, the number of complaints received, the number of complaints resolved, the number of enforcement actions by sanction type, the average time to resolve a complaint, fee schedule, and our reserve balances. Were there any questions regarding the SDSI report? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, we will skip to page 66, Amber. Okay, thank you. Page 66, we're covering the fiscal year 2020 budget reconciliation. So the actual revenue collected for FY 2020 was $12,329,504. We transferred in $3.75 million from the strategic reserves, which was and the total expenditures for FY 20 was $13,956,451. I'd just like to point out that had we not transferred in funding from the strategic reserves as an attempt to eliminate the fund, we would have realized an operational loss. Instead, we had a net operating income of $2.1 million. I would now like to direct your attention to page 25 of the workbook. So Amber, if you could go to 25 for me. This details our 5-year trend data. In 2016, we had revenue of $12.2 million, expenses of $8.5 million, a net operating income of $3.7 million. 2017, we had a 5.5% increase in revenue. Revenue was $12.95 million, expenses 9.2, net operating income of 3.7. In 2018, we had a 3.6% decrease in our revenue. We collected only $12,478,545. Expenses increased by $9.4 million to $10,079,044. We had an overall net income of $2.4 million. In FY 2019, I jumped ahead a few years, excuse me. In 2019, we saw a 7.2% increase in our revenue. We collected $13.3 million and we transferred in $1.7 million from the strategic reserves. Expenses were $11.4 million and we had a net operating income of $3.6 million. Now in 2020, I'm going to recap 2020 just one more time. We had a 7.8% decrease in our revenue. We only collected $12,329,504. I would attribute this decrease in our revenue to the pandemic, as we saw almost a 50% less of revenue generated for educational fees. We saw $775,000 less for license fees and $60,000 less for exam fees. We also transferred in $3.75 million from the strategic reserves, and our expenses increased by 21% to $13,956,451. This is attributed to the increase in our FTEs that were previously approved, retirements, and some furniture replacement. My goal moving forward is to be mindful of our economic climate and to move to a more sustainable and balanced budget approach. Are there any questions regarding the budget reconciliation? Yes, I see one hand. Mr. Turner?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Turner. And you all may have covered some of this at the August meeting that I missed. Forgive me, because I noticed that's when we voted to move our funds into just GR from the strategic initiative designation or whatever it was called. But I'm overall concerned at on our 5-year trend data, the last slide we're looking at, that we had to reallocate $3.7 million from the fund balance. And then we're projected for 2021, 2022, and 2023 to continue to run at, just looking at expenditures versus revenues, at a deficit. So what are we doing
Yes.
to look towards the future and plan for this?
Yes, sir. So it was my understanding that the direction and the directive was to eliminate the strategic reserves. And from my understanding, we had 12 million that was in that, as a result of sunset. And so the agency was intentional about the transfers in that you see from the fund balance, and additional FTEs were authorized so that we could address the issues that were brought up by sunset. And so, we increased the FTEs, we spent more funding towards IT related projects to address the customer service issues that we have. But I am mindful of the deficits that you're seeing. And as I've mentioned before, my approach is balanced budget approach. So we can't continue to increase our FTEs. We can't continue to have increased salary costs without additional revenue. So there are going to be lots of different options presented to the budget committee for ways ahead. But what you see now as far as the transfers in, those were things that were already pre-authorized, and they were intentional so that we eliminated that strategic reserve fund.
I want to add one thing, and that is just that there's a uniqueness in that we were directed to eliminate the strategic reserve and to address customer service challenges. And to address customer service challenges, we increased FTEs, right? Which are ongoing expenses. So every year we'll have those same expenses, but of course the strategic reserve doesn't continue. So we are in a season of examining that. How can we toggle ongoing expenses to not be exactly back where we were from a customer service perspective, or similar in some other regard, while living within our means. So I think this season of 18 months, 2 years, we will need to adjust what you see in projections for the coming years to a more realistic approach from an ongoing expenses standpoint. So this is front of mind as we make employment decisions. And what right now that just looks like assessing how best to use our resources and to make some to consider, to think thoroughly through the decision of whether or not to fill open positions before we just go out and hire. So that's today.
Yep, I just wanted to call some attention to it and make sure in particular that, Chelsea, I'm glad to hear you say that I'm not surprised in your mind, but I just want to make sure that all my fellow commissioners notice this too. This is a big deal, and the only thing that would be worse than getting back to a place where our customer service was not acceptable would be to be back in that place and be broke.
Right.
So and not have a strategic reserve there that we can use, but that money's going to run out in like 2 years at this pace. And that's not acceptable, and it's not okay. So we've got to figure out which part of those Band-Aids we can take off eventually, because Chelsea, you hit the nail on the head. What you have here is a bunch of FTEs that we've added, and you see this in agencies and businesses and bureaucracies. It's a lot easier to add positions than it is to take them away. And unless we increase our fees or we have a continued increase in licensees, we're not going to have the money to pay for those people soon.
Right. And we're and this is a healthy place to start making these decisions. We're not in a place where today is not dire, but we will be in a dire place if we're not making conservative decisions.
Yeah. All right.
Let's see. Commissioner Stevens?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that this was taken very seriously by the Budget Committee. It was all these considerations are very important, and we're trying to strive a balance between the Sunset Commission recommendations and complying. And one of the things that we need to be reminded is that the revenues that come in yearly need to be spent by the end of the year. So, and that's the challenge right now that we have. And we spoke precisely of this, that we're going to need to have the flexibility so that as the funds, once that's over, I mean, that we have to have the flexibility. So before we get there, that we're able to be the self-sufficient agency, I mean, semi-independent, and we need to comply with everything. But it was considered by the Budget Committee.
So this is my fault for, again, not being there when there was a vote to move, it looks like to move the remaining funds into, where did I see that? Just kind of our general revenue category. Just for my 2 cents, we needed bodies. We absolutely needed FTEs, and I'm glad we put them in place. But one reason I for one like this being characterized as strategic initiative fund is because it would be my suggestion to really look towards more permanent one-time spends, like the call center, infrastructure, technology, and again, you guys, I may be saying something that's already been said by a lot of people a lot of times. So I apologize if that's the case, and I'm almost done. But let's just be mindful of that, of what kind of investments we can make with that money, not just in stopgap FTE salary funding, but in permanent solutions that can help us, that don't result in recurring spending that we won't be able to afford in 2 or 3 years.
Yes, sir. Hearing or seeing nothing else, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, just real quick, TJ, totally agree. I know we're talking about earmarking part of that for like the Versa replacement over 3 years and stuff like that. But I totally agree. We definitely need to keep an eye on it, because we're kind of the chicken and the egg. We have too much money, don't get enough money. We need FTE. So it is something we're definitely going to watch over the next, over the next year, and probably in February when we have another workshop. So I thank you for bringing it up, and I thank everybody for their discussion. I think that puts us ahead of the game, everybody looking at it, knowing where we're at and where we need to go and how to get there. So TJ, thanks for bringing that up. Okay, we're going to skip down to agenda item number 6 and come back at 5 after agenda item number 6 and 7. So if Director of Enforcement, Mike Malloy, if you're ready, we'll go ahead and go with agenda item 6.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Mike Malloy, Director of Enforcement. I'm going to talk briefly about administrative penalties. You can go to the next slide, Amber. So I broke this down basically into 3 questions. Where does the commission get their authority to do administrative penalties? What factors or considerations do we consider when we levy these administrative penalties and consider the punishment overall for a license holder? And third, how much is actually collected and where does it go? Because there's some misconceptions, I believe, in regards to at least where the administrative penalties that we assess and collect go. You can go to the next slide, Amber. So our authority is based in the statute in the Real Estate License Act. Under 1101-701, the legislature gave us the authority to administer an administrative penalty for any violation of the rule or the statute. But the real heart of our administrative penalty abilities comes from 1101-702, which sets out the maximum amount of the violation, which is $5,000. That's for each violation. We have the authority to do it per day that the violation continues. We don't do that. We feel that's extra, like a little too punitive. So we basically take it from an approach. You do one violation, we administrate the fine based upon one violation. More importantly, it provides 5 factors, and I'm going to go into those in my next slide. And those 5 factors gives us some guidance in how we're supposed to more or less assess how much the admin penalty should be. And it also, that statute required us to establish a penalty schedule. So about 14 years ago, when we went through the previous sunset review, that was a recommendation that we went through, and we established Rule 535-191, and that's it's a tier-based penalty matrix that everyone in the enforcement division uses. When we find that there's someone that needs to be punished appropriately, we look and use those guidances that the commission used that when we established the penalty matrix. So we can go there. I'll talk more from examples in a little bit after I go through the considerations. So these are the 5 factors, and the first 4 are the most important that we look at. And I'll say that even though these are established for administrative penalties, we look at this in a total sense. So if we're going to reprimand or put someone on suspension or revoke someone, we take all these considerations in every case that we deal with. So the first one is how serious the actions are, and we look at the circumstances of the case, what the facts and the details are, what maybe the impact it was against the consumer, and overall, like what a possible deterrent would be or necessary to overall protect the public. Another important thing is we always look at is someone's complaint history. Is this person, is the first time they've ever had a complaint and they've been licensed for 20 years, or is this their 15th complaint and we've already disciplined them 3 or 4 times previously. So then we go to the next step, where what amount would stop future misbehavior. That's when we go to the penalty, the matrix itself, and we set out based upon the first 2 questions that had they had previous disciplinary action. So if they had previous disciplinary action, then we probably need to bump up the administrative penalty. If it's someone's first time getting a complaint and it's serious enough to do formal disciplinary action, then we'll probably go on the lowest tier, the lower level amount of administrative penalty. And another factor we look into, and it's really important, is did the person that did the misbehavior, did they try to correct it, without, the pressure of a complaint being filed against them or anything like that? They took proactive actions, and those go real far. That in some cases, for some people, in the past, it's been the difference of giving someone a probated suspension versus actually suspending them or revoking them, that they actually acknowledged their mistake or their misbehavior, and we took that into consideration, and they corrected, they made the consumer whole if there was some sort of issue with that, and we take that in consideration. The number 5 is basically a catch-all. It's general considerations that we should make to basically maybe like a global perspective if it's like a big issue that's reoccurring between people or the license holder itself. So before I go to there, I'm going to talk about the penalty matrix really briefly. When I talked about the 3 tiers, the first tier is the lowest tier. It's $100 to $1,500. So a good example for that is like an advertising violation. The middle tier is $500 to $3,000. And that's where you have your negligence, your violations that aren't intentional. They're more just mistakes, things that could be improved in processing, like broker responsibility or broker supervision. And the third tier is the $1,000 to $5,000, which is more of the more egregious things where the commission felt that that needs to have the highest administrative penalty. So that's got your fraud or bad faith type violations, or like a failure to remit funds that you took from a consumer. That's one up that's in the highest tier as well. So where do the administrative penalties? They're not revenue. They don't go in our general fund. They're actually statutorily required to be deposited into the recovery fund. And there's a statute that for brokers and sales agents that goes into their fund. And then there's another separate statute in the inspector statute that their administrative penalties go into their trust account. So I'll go to the next slide. This is a breakdown of basically the past 6 years the blue part is the amounts we've assessed, and then the little box at the top is the actual amount we collected. It was pretty static from 2015 to 2018. 2019 and 2020 can be explained by a case we had in 2019 that was had a very high administrative penalty, about $124,000. So that accounted for the good amount of that big chunk. And then this past year we had a case that had about $75,000, and then we had a couple other cases. The actual collection of it has been pretty static, pretty much for 40% the past. We've only been really tracking this type of data, the assessed versus collected, for the past 6 years. So. Does anyone have any questions? I think we're going to get more into the recovery fund with Amber, and then I'll close that out by talking about basically what the enforcement division does if someone doesn't pay for the recovery fund claims. I believe it's Commissioner Miller.
I think if you're going to explain what you do when it's not collected, that's what makes sense. So you're about to do that, and I'm excited about it.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna intro this a little bit. This we're calling this Recovery Fund 101. This is something that we had talked about doing as we look at the commission and your role with the recovery fund and voting on these cases and how much money to release from that fund. We wanted to go ahead and do sort of an overview so that there's a lot more transparency into this fund and into the agency process before we bring it to you in an open meeting. And then I'm going to turn it over to the two who did all of the real work on this. I want to intro officially Abby Lee as our new Deputy Counsel. She is probably more familiar to all of you than she is to me from her past work with Texas Realtors. And I'm just super excited and happy to have her. She's going to be a great asset to us, and she has brought herself up to speed. She's given herself her own Recovery Fund 101 in doing this presentation, and I think that's going to be a really good thing. And then I also will give all of the nods of appreciation to Amber, who you guys may not know is our Recovery Fund specialist. If there's ever a question on Recovery Fund, the first place I go running to is Amber. And so they're going to walk you through, Abby's going to walk you through the statutory process. She's going to dissect that statute and explain to you the ins and outs of, you know, who can recover, who can you recover against, what happens, all of that stuff. Amber's going to actually take you through the internal process of what we do when we get a claim. And how we get to the recommendations that we get to. And then Renata is going to go through the financial back end side of that and some of the numbers that you're seeing, your statistics, your caps, everything like that, which should be really helpful to you in the discussion that's coming up on initiatives. And also I just really want to open the door on this. I want you guys to know what's going on with this fund. This is a big part of what we do, and I think it really helps a lot of people. And then finally, I will show you guys a draft brief of what I hope to start bringing to you all ahead of every commission meeting, so that you really know these cases. It's not going to be long, but I think it's going to contain the information you really need to see and in advance, so that you're not reading a spreadsheet in the middle of executive session. I think we can give you more and better information. So I want to show you guys that, and I will take any comments on that afterwards. But I will now turn it over to the True Recovery Fund team of Abby and Amber.
Great. Thank you, Vanessa, and good morning, commissioners. Again, Abby Lee, Deputy General Counsel. As Vanessa mentioned, I'm going to be providing the statutory requirement overview, and Amber is going to tackle the more process, procedure behind the recovery fund. So jumping right in, we say real estate recovery trust account. We also call that the recovery fund. So they're one and the same. It's governed by subchapter M of the Real Estate License Act. So that's where you're going to find the statutory requirements that I'm going to talk about. And just very generally, you know, what is it? It's a fund of last resort. And so that means that it's created to reimburse consumers for their out-of-pocket damages when, for instance, a license holder can't pay those damages. So fund of last resort. So diving right in here, who can be reimbursed from the recovery fund? So there's actually three categories. Consumers can be reimbursed if they suffer damage caused by one of these three groups of people. So the first category is real estate brokers or sales agents. And this is the predominant category of the claims we see. About 99% of the claims that come in are going to be for real estate license holders. But the statute also includes two other categories, easement and right-of-way agents, and also unlicensed employees or agents of either A or B. So the statute has several categories of groups there. So what type of conduct entitles a consumer to reimbursement? So the statute says that really there are two things you need to look at. First, it's conduct that has to require a license or certificate in the first place. Certificate meaning for an easement or right-of-way agent. And then second, depending on whether we're talking about a real estate license holder or an easement or right-of-way agent, it violates certain provisions of 1101. So, you know, specifically for license holders, the statute says it's got to be described by 1101.652 subsection A-11 or B. So what are some of the things that are included just as an example? So just looking at B, you know, B says that the commission can take action if the license holder, while they're engaged in real estate brokerage, acts negligently or incompetently. makes a material misrepresentation concerning a material defect, or another example, fails to disclose a material defect that's known to the license holder. So just some examples of what that actually looks like. Next slide. So how is the trust account funded? And so Mike talked a little bit about this with administrative penalties. So that's one way that the trust account is funded, is through administrative penalties. The other way is, per the statute, a $10 fee from each applicant for an original license or certificate of registration. Now, the statute does allow some flexibility for the commission. So if there were additional ways established by rules, there could be additional assessments. However, we don't do that. We don't have a plan to do that in the moment. So the main vehicles for funding the fund are this $10 fee and then the administrative penalties that Mike just talked about. I will mention that in certain situations, if the balance of the fund becomes less than a certain amount or more than a certain amount, then the statute describes certain actions that are taken. So for instance, if the balance becomes less than $1 million, then an additional $10 fee is assessed at renewal. So not just for original licenses, but also at renewal. Again, that's not the case, but the statute allows that. Additionally, if the balance reaches a certain level, which is the greater of either 3.5 million or the total amount of claims paid during the past 4 fiscal years, then that excess by statute actually has to be transferred to the general revenue fund. So again, there are some allowances in the statute depending on the level of the fund at any given moment, but generally how is it funded? That $10 fee and then administrative penalties. Next slide. Thank you. So what does a consumer need to file a claim for reimbursement? Well, the first thing they're going to need to do is they're going to have to file a lawsuit, go through that process, and then obtain a final judgment. Now, it's important to note that the lawsuit actually has to be filed within a certain amount of time. There is a statute of limitations. So the statute says it's got to be filed within 2 years from the date the events giving rise to the claim occurred. But that's the first step, getting a final judgment. The second step is an abstract of judgment, and that's simply a document. It's filed in the real property records. It creates a lien. The third item that has to be obtained is a writ of execution, and that writ has to be returned nulla bona, meaning no good. So, the sheriff or the constable is not able to find property to pay off the judgment. And that kind of ties back to that fund of last resort concept we talked about earlier. And then last but not least, the consumer has to complete an application for an order directing payment, and that's filed with the same court. The commission actually has some really helpful information on our website that goes into greater detail about what these items are and how a consumer actually obtains these things. So it's not so confusing. It's pretty helpful information. So if there are questions, we've got a lot of great information on our website for consumers to digest. Okay, so what can the commission do in response to a claim? So there's really 2 tracks that, a claim comes in. One of 2 things is going to happen. Either the commission is going to agree to pay, all or part of the claim without a hearing, or a settlement could be reached. So that's one track. The other is the commission doesn't agree to pay. And then at that point, the statute says we can notify the AG that we wish them to schedule a hearing, defend the action, or take other action. Kind of interesting about the statute is that it allows the commission to retry or relitigate issues that were actually determined in the underlying lawsuit. So that's a little interesting allowance from the statute as well. And then my last slide before I turn it over to Amber, unless there are any questions, what are the payment limits? So currently the payment limits per statute, it is $50,000 per transaction or $100,000 per license or certificate holder. And it's important to keep in mind that that limit actually includes attorney's fees as well as interest and court costs. So it's not just a limit on actual damages, it's inclusive of all of those items. So unless there are any questions, which I'm happy to answer, I will turn it over to Amber.
Okay, thanks, Abby. So as Vanessa mentioned earlier, in addition to being the recording secretary for the commission, I'm also the Recovery Fund program specialist. So these next slides contain the steps that I take when an application is received. So when we receive a claim, we assign a recovery fund number and perform an initial review. Based on that review, we will send a letter to the plaintiff or the plaintiff's attorney to request additional information. We'll provide a time frame in which to return the information to us, and we will inform them of the date of the next commission meeting. We also send a letter to the defendant license holder to notify them that a claim has been received, and this provides an opportunity for the license holder to respond to TREC. Their response may be that they have filed bankruptcy or that they're going to hire an attorney to file a bill of review of the underlying case. However, the most common response we receive is actually none at all. And this is because their license may have expired, been revoked, or the license holder may have just simply disappeared. We also send a letter to the Office of the Attorney General requesting representation. This is normal procedure for all court cases that involve TREC and not limited to just recovery fund cases. So after additional information is received from the plaintiff or their attorney, we begin an actual thorough review of the documents. Our review will include verifying if the defendant held a license at the time the incident occurred, and making sure that the incident was a violation of Texas Occupations Code 1101.652A11 when the license holder represents themselves, a spouse or a child, or B, and and Abby gave some examples of these violations, but this is when they represent another person. Next, we create a spreadsheet that breaks down the eligible amounts, and we verify those amounts with the documentation received. Some of this documentation may be a lease agreement, bank statements, emails, receipts, and attorney billing statements. And after determining the eligible amounts, we send a settlement offer to the plaintiff or their attorney. 99% of the time, the settlement offer is accepted. However, if the offer is rejected and we cannot come to an agreement, as Abby said, we direct the plaintiff or their attorney to the OAG's office, who represents us in these matters. So if the settlement offer is accepted, the claim is placed on the next commission meeting agenda for the commission's review and possible approval. If approved by the commission, the OAG will later send out documentation to be signed, including an order directing payment and an assignment of judgment. Once these documents are returned to TREC, Finance will obtain a warrant, which is what we call a check here in state government, and mail that payment to the plaintiff or their attorney. TREC will record the assignment of judgment in the county clerk's office, which essentially holds our place in line in the event that funds later become available. That way TREC can be paid back. If the defendant still has a license at the time of that payment, we will then make a referral to the enforcement division for further action. So this concludes my portion of this presentation, and if there are no questions, Mike is going to clarify something regarding enforcement in the recovery fund, and then we will turn it over to Renata to talk about administrative penalties.
So one quick misconception that a lot of people have: you do not have to file a consumer complaint with enforcement in order to file a recovery fund claim. So that's not a statutory requirement. But basically, after the warrant is issued and the commission's paid the claimant, and if the person has a license still, it's referred over us, and we it's an administrative function that's based in the statute, and we send a letter to the license holder informing them that there's been a payment made and we haven't received money yet for it, and they have 31 days to make that payment, or they'll be revoked based upon like operational law. They're not entitled to a hearing to it. It's basically statutory. You pay in the 31 days or you're revoked. They're not entitled to come back and become a license holder again until they repay that fund. So basically, there's already a 2-year statutory limit in there if anyone's revoked, but this is an additional level where you're going to have to pay the fund, in order to even be eligible to come back. But even if you've been revoked, there's a minimum. Say a person paid within 6 months of it being paid, they would be revoked a minimum of 2 years on top of that. So, is there any questions about that? I believe if they do pay, the money goes back into the recovery fund to replenish the amount that was used. Yes, Commissioner Miller.
Is this why the percentage level, I know was like 41% or 44% of all the payments that are established, and then we don't get paid? Is this the reason that their licenses are revoked? They know they'll never get a real estate license again, so they're not worried about it? And do we have no way to get blood out of that turnip, or what?
Well, the chart that I showed, that was strictly administrative penalties that we collect. Renata may have statistics on the amount of collections we get for recovery fund, but my recollection is pretty low. But yes, to be blunt, a lot of people that get these high, that we pay out full amounts on the recovery funds, they know they're never going to come back. So,
It does come back to haunt them in unique ways. For instance, if they were to win small or large in the lottery, that because the Lottery Commission is a state agency, we can collect off of that win, strangely. And any other, there are some similar collections like that because of the connection between state agencies, because it's basically the state trying to recover.
Yeah. I will note, if someone, just to go back to administrative penalties, the Attorney General does our collections for that. They have a cap of the amount, the minimum they'll take to do collections, and it's $5,000 or more. And the AG, they will harass people. They're very good at their job. They may not get the money from them, but they will make the license holders life very difficult for a period of time. And if they do get a judgment or some of that, that's filed in the abstracts. So if someone does come back or they have some sort of asset, then we could possibly get some sort of claim somewhere down the road. If that's like Chelsea was alluding to, lottery winnings or lost money types of stuff that runs through we flag them, and I believe in the comptroller. So,
Commissioner Miller, I think one of the reasons also that we don't recover or get paid back when we have to pay out of the recovery fund is, you'll recall, it's a trigger for plaintiffs to be able to get money from the recovery fund that it's been determined that the judgment debtor, the bad actor, agent, or broker is judgment proof and doesn't have any assets to pay the judgment that's been entered against them. So, like you said, it's squeezing blood from turnips. That's one reason the plaintiffs consumers turn to the recovery fund is because they haven't had any luck satisfying their judgment against the person who is responsible for it. That's kind of why it's there.
It's a fund of last resort for the recovery fund. Yeah.
Well, I just remember, it may have been the last meeting that we had that guy that owed the recovery fund $100,000, and yet he was coming back again, and his license was still intact because he kept doing these. I'm sorry, this is Jan's interpretation. He kept doing these shell LLCs, etc., and trying to get those licensed, and yet he still owed the recovery fund $100,000. And when then I saw the statistics of collection this time around, I was just kind of surprised. So we can certainly move on. I don't want to hold us up.
Well, and Renata's going to take us through some of the finance side of things, so that might help too.
Commissioner Leonard had his hand up.
I did. First, I want to say, Abby, congratulations. I'm thrilled that you're with us. I know you'll be the kind of asset to the commission that you were for years at the association. So congratulations, and I'm thrilled to see you on our team.
Thank you, Commissioner Leonard.
I do have a question, Abby. The first slide you put up listed the 3 types of people that we will pay from the recovery fund for, and one was brokers and licensed and sales agents. I think number 2 was easement and right-of-way agents, right? Mm-hmm. The 3 is, unlicensed employee or agent of A or B. Okay, I read that wrong. I apologized. I saw unlicensed and then you went to the next slide.
Oh.
So I get it. All right, never mind.
Perfect.
Let my congratulations stand.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, and I'm going to discuss the financial aspect of both the real estate recovery fund and the inspector recovery fund. I know we've been pretty much focusing on the real estate recovery fund, but I wanted to let you all know, we also have a recovery fund for inspector recoveries as well. So next slide. Some of this stuff has already been covered by Abby. And so it's just a rehash of the information. So we have statutory authority found in Texas Occupation Code 1101, subchapter M, for the real estate recovery trust account. Monies collected are maintained in a trust fund with the Texas Treasury Safekeeping Company. The funds are invested in our U.S. Treasury notes and various repurchase agreements or repos, and that's just so that we can ensure liquidity of assets for payments of any claims. Any interest that's earned on those deposits is credited back to the trust account. And for the real estate recovery fund, if the balance in the trust account on December 31st of a year is greater than $3.5 million, then the commission shall transfer the excess amount of the money in the trust to the credit of the state treasury general revenue fund. And the commission has never had to transfer any excess funding to the state treasury general revenue fund. Next slide. So this slide just depicts what our ending fiscal year balances were for the real estate recovery fund and the payment. So in 2016, we had an ending balance as of August 31st of 1.5 million. We had payments of 636,000. 2017, 1.9 million, payments of 319,000. 2018, 2.3 million, payments of 193,000. 2019, 2.7 million, payments of 458,000, and in 2020, a balance of 3.1 million, payments of 223,000. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to point out that as of September the 30th, the balance was 3.1 million, and we've had one payment thus far, and that was for 117,000. Now looking at the real estate recovery fund, again, I just mentioned the payment amounts, but this is just also in a graph, and also so you can see the number of payments. So in 2016, there were 20 payments that were made for that total of the 636,000. 2017, 14 payments. 2018, 7 payments, 2019, 22 payments, and in in FY20, we had 7 payments. Next slide, please. Now I would like to also speak about the Inspector Recovery Fund. So our statutory authority for that is found in Texas Occupations Code 1102, Subchapter H, Real Estate Inspection Recovery Fund. Again, the monies collected or maintained with the Texas Treasury Safekeeping Company. The funds are invested in our U.S. Treasury notes and repurchase agreements. The interest is deposited back to the trust account or the Inspector Recovery Fund. And for this one, if the balance in the fund on December 31st of a year is more than $600,000, the commission shall transfer the amount in excess to the state treasury to their general revenue fund. And the commission has transferred funds to the state treasury totaling $111,802.35 between FY 2017 and FY 2020. And I'm currently estimating that we're going to be transferring $15,457.20 on December 31st, based off of our balances and the fact that I haven't seen any pending inspector recoveries payments in the next 90 days. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide shows what our ending balances were for the Inspector Recovery Fund and the payments. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of activity in the Inspector Recovery Fund. So in 2016, we had an ending balance of $590,000. We had 0 payments. 2017, $607,000, and we had 1 payment for $2,275.23. 2018, $614,000. We had 2 payments, and that totaled $25,000. And I failed to mention before that the limit is $12,500 for a transaction. So that's why you see the 2 payments and it totals $25,000, because the limit for each is $12,500. In 2019, we had 0 payments. 2020, we had 0 payments. Next slide, please. And this again just goes over the information about the number of payments and the total amount of the payments and when they were. And as mentioned previously, we also have transferred a total of, let's see, where is that? $118,802.35 between 2016 and 2020. And those amounts were, we transferred $7,873.42 in FY 2017. We transferred to general revenue $27,643.02 in 2018, $30,505.88 in 2019. In FY 20, we transferred $45,780.03. And again, as I stated previously, I'm estimating that we'll transfer $15,457.20 on December 31st of this year, due to our current balance being in excess of the $600,000, and there are no anticipated payments within the next 90 days. And this concludes my portion of the recovery funds that we have. Do we have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Any
All right, I
questions?
do.
Yes.
Are the requirements the same for the inspector lawsuit, that they have to go through a lawsuit and then they have to get a judgment and all that? It's the exact same thing for the inspectors as it is for real estate agents?
And I would defer to Abby or to Vanessa on that one.
So this is Abby Lee. So I haven't actually looked into the Inspector Recovery Fund yet. So Vanessa may know, or Amber may know, but if they don't, then I can certainly get that information for you, Commissioner.
I don't have, I actually also don't have that off the top of my head. I think we haven't had a claim in quite a long time, right?
Since
but we
2018.
2018. We can get that information to you unless Amber recalls that process. This is what's going to come up in our legislative initiatives conversation too, is this real estate inspector recovery fund. But we could also certainly prepare a summary on that. We just wanted to focus on the one where you guys are really seeing the cases.
It's just a lot to think about inspectors paying, and personally, I've never known an inspector to even, they never have any money they get out of every lawsuit I've ever been involved with them. Every, for years.
They're also
how they do it.
required to carry liability insurance.
Well,
Right.
thankfully now,
But our agents and our brokers are not. So I'm not advocating for that one way or the other, but when you have insurance to pay claims that are made against you as an inspector, then you're not insolvent or judgment proof. So nobody ever gets to the recovery fund because they're recovering from insurance policies.
but even now that they have that though, Commissioner Turner, they seem to still get out of it. Just saying.
Oh yeah, they do. They have limitations on liability in their contracts, and they're a profession, so they can't be sued under the DTPA. So yeah, they've done a good job of protecting themselves.
What happened to the rest of us?
I talked to your realtor association. Got a legislative session coming up. Go get some tort reform.
Commissioner Stevens, did you have a question?
I did. For Renata, please, Ms. Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we assess also a $10 fee to inspectors, as we do to? Does the commission do that?
And so it's not a $10 fee. Looking at the statute, it just says that in addition to other fees required by this chapter, so their regular fees for their licenses, a person who passes a license examination must pay a fee not to exceed $200, and the commission shall deposit the fee to the credit of the inspector recovery fund before issuing the license.
Okay.
Tony, you have something to add?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Vanessa asked if I wanted to add something. Yeah, we actually do assess them. It's in our fee rule. They pay a $10 fee upon licensure. It was lowered from $100 several years ago. It used to be a $100 fee. We lowered it to $10 because of the issues that have been discussed here. We just kept having excess money to go to general revenue. So we're looking at a way to try to possibly, because the money, there were calls on the recovery fund and the money was excess, to try to make it a little bit easier for inspectors. So that fee was lowered to $10, I think, in 2014 by rule.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions on that part? And you are welcome. We'll get back with you on the inspector part, and you're welcome after any of these presentations to email us any questions that come up that you're thinking through. Amber sent you a copy of all these slides prior to this meeting, so you can go through. If you have anything where you're like, oh, I didn't understand this, or I had a question, please feel free to reach out to us. I'm going to attempt to share my screen, which is the most paralyzing moment of me working on Teams. So let me see if I can do it. Yes. Okay, can you guys see that? Yeah, Tony, you're the only one I can see. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. When you're sharing, you can only see one sort of random person. Mine is Tony. Okay, so this is what we have drafted. I'm saying we generously because Abby did this. We talked previously, I spoke with the commissioners about getting a little bit of a more substantive document out ahead of commission meetings. So this would be something that we and GC send to the commissioners. It won't be in the materials. It'll be a privileged document. This version is, you don't have any work to do on this. I am going to send it to you guys for any comments you want to provide me, but this is a case that you have already looked at. We just briefed it in order to show you what we're thinking. So instead of getting that spreadsheet at executive session, we would send this to you in advance, just to the commission members. It'll have the case, the name, and it's a summary, and it's our staff recommendations. So what you'll see here is you'll see more detailed facts. We will try to not make it super long. We'll try and keep it to what's really relevant. But this way you'll have a better idea of who's involved, what happened, what the dollar amounts are, just a better summary. Then this was something that came up, I know, in our last conversation, is what's the history of the decision? Who decided what? So we've got a little bit of a judicial history where we got the judgments from and how it ended up. And then here is the recommendation. And what this does is this summarizes a lot of what Amber was talking about. And so Amber goes through her whole process, and then she turns it over to us, and we review and we make sure, okay, is it in line with statute? Does it meet all of the requirements? Does it look like there were violations of the appropriate code? And so we'll show you how we got to the recommendation that we're bringing to you at the commission meeting to approve. I do not anticipate, with the exception of, I know we've got some different cases coming up for February that have like a little bit of extra stuff in them. I don't anticipate these briefs ever being much longer than this. This is a 2-page document. So I would hate to give you guys too much stuff. I know there's a lot of reading in our materials, but I do think some sort of summary like this might be really helpful for you guys to have in advance of that executive session. So if you have questions, we can have a more robust conversation. And then, you know, when you do that vote to recommend the funds, hopefully we've been able to go through everything that you need to feel really confident in making that decision. I will send that draft brief out, and if you have anything you would like to see added to it, if you have ideas, if you hate it, if you love it, you can let us know and we'll adjust it accordingly. This is a new process. I just want to make it, a little bit more transparent and easier for you guys. So please let us know how we can do that for you. And you can just respond. I'll put Abby on there directly to Abby and me, and we'll take any comments you may have. Tony, are you raising your hand because you forgot to unraise it or because you have a comment?
Because I forgot to unraise it, I will unraise it.
That's what I thought. Tony's used to me giving him a hard time. Okay, so if nobody has any additional questions, that is it for Recovery Fund 101, and I will turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, thank you. Before we move to agenda item number 5, we moved it down after 7. I'm going to see if everybody's ready for about a 5-minute break for necessities. Is everybody okay with that? All right, we're going to break. Let's say be back here at, let's say 11:40. That's 9 minutes. Okay, 11:40. All right, I showed 10:40, so if everybody's back, we will start back, and I'm gonna back up to agenda item number 5 and ask Deputy Executive Director Tony Slagle if he will go ahead and present.
Yes, still morning. Good morning, everybody. Tony Slagle, Deputy Executive Director. I've got a list here of items that we've gathered in staff, talked to the executive committee over. There may be some additional items based on the conversation we have, in particular with some conversations that happened just before we took a break about the recovery fund. But I just wanted to share with you my little bulleted list here so that we can go through them. hold on, I'm like Vanessa, sharing my screen for some reason gives me great horrors. I don't know why. Let me see here. Okay, I'm hoping that everybody can see that. And please feel free to ask any questions when you come up. If someone could watch the hands, because I can't see them while I'm sharing my screen, to see if there's a question or not, and just let me know. So I've divided this up into sort of four major sections, amendments to 1101, 1102, to both 1101 and 1102. And actually, it's probably broader than that. That would apply to all license types, the third group, and then an amendment to Chapter 411 of the Government Code, and we'll get to that at the end. So the first list of amendments are based on the broker responsibility recommendations that will be before you tomorrow. There are some possible legislative changes as a result of that. As all of you are aware, there are certain requirements set in statute in terms of the number of, I believe, education hours that are required. So any sort of recommendation in adjusting those would likely need a legislative change. There are kind of two approaches to go about that. You could set numbers in statute, and then they would be set in statute until the next time there was a need to amend them, and you go forward with that. Or there's the other approach, which is to ask for some just rulemaking authority, broad rulemaking authority, by which the commission would then be in charge of establishing those numbers by rule. And I think likely probably putting some cap and feel that things could go run, the commission might go rogue or something like that. But that's a second option, is that you give the commission the ability to adjust those as the need arises by rule. So those are two ways to approach those three bullets essentially. They're tied to a particular portion of 1101, and there's the requirements for someone who's actually going through the licensing process, and then there's some additional requirements for somebody coming in from out of state. And again, depending on the approach the the commission wants to work through, you can either have things established by statute, which they're set in stone till the next amendment, or the broader rulemaking authority. Anyone have any questions on that before I move forward? Okay. And then the second set of possible recommendations involve the inspector statute. So the first one is to repeal the real estate inspector license. I will let all the commissioners know that I did speak with the largest trade association in the state of Texas just to get their pulse on some of these changes, and that's TREC. The current president of that organization didn't have any heartburn over any of this, but he was going to do a survey of his association members just to see if anybody else did, and that's important because once I get to bullet number 2, I'll explain why. So the first one is to repeal the real estate inspector license, and what that means is there's currently two inspector licenses. There's the real estate one, professional one. The real estate one is very rarely utilized. The numbers are very small. Most applicants that come in through the process go through the associate experience process, and they go straight to getting a license as a professional inspector. When we set about with the real estate inspector committee to enact and work on some sunset recommendations to make the licensing requirements less burdensome and more meaningful, the fact that there was that two-tier system really complicated things beyond really the necessity to. So the thought was, if you get this down to where there's one license type, and you could still have an apprenticeship for those who wanted to enter the industry that way, but to get rid of that real estate, that mid-level license would remove that complication for anyone entering the industry, as well as for staff processing those. So that's that first recommendation. The second one is to repeal the Inspector Recovery Fund. Now, there was some discussion just before the break about how that fund is underutilized for a variety of reasons. One of which is that there's an insurance requirement there. So the thought there is there may not really be a need to have both. In the past, this was actually something that was filed in 2013, and that same trade association I spoke with had some significant issues with it, mainly because they hated the insurance requirement being mandatory. So they thought maintaining the recovery fund gave them a possible out to get that repealed. It's going on 12 years now since that insurance requirement was put into place. And in talking with Capria's leadership, they are no longer, they understand that that's here to stay. So they're more amenable to repealing the recovery fund, should that be something the commission would like to move forward with, and also pending any sort of major concerns from their membership. We have language that we can build off of if that is what the commission wants to do, that was filed in the bill in 2013. Just to give you, I apologize, my lights go off in my office. To give you an idea of what that would be, the commission would determine what the liability remaining, if we were to repeal it, what remaining in the fund is, set aside a portion of that until all outstanding claims on the fund were paid over a several year, maybe 4 or 5 year process. And then at the end of that, whatever's remaining, the commission could determine how to best get that back into to the industry members, our license holders. And then if there's anything remaining from that, the way the prior bill worked is that would be placed in the General Revenue Fund of Texas, and that would offset our yearly payment of $750,000 by whatever that difference is. So that was how that particular statutory provision was written, as well as the admin penalties that currently go into the Inspector Recovery Fund. Should it be repealed, then any admin penalties would also go to GR on a regular basis once it was repealed. And the way the amendment was written is that would also offset any money that it would offset that $750 that we pay on a yearly basis to GR. And then the very last bullet under 1102 is something just to get that statute up to the same consistency with 1101. Right now, there's no prohibition that someone can reapply after they've been revoked. Currently in 1101, you have to wait 2 years to do that. There's not a similar provision in 1102, and this would just clarify that and make that provision be part of 1102. So, any questions about that before I move forward? I can't see if anyone has any, so I'm just going to look at Scott shaking his head and say that's right. Okay, moving on to this next amendment is to, currently there's sort of a two-part process by anybody who wants to come in to get licensed. They can request what's called a fitness determination, pay the agency $50 to do that. This is prior to actually starting the licensing or the application process. Then staff, based on the answer to questions on that form, staff then determines whether or not there's a potential problem with them getting licensed through the application process. The recommendation here is to sort of do away with that process and make the fingerprinting be part of it, because then even after they get the fitness determination, currently they have to go through the process of going through an FBI check and getting fingerprinted anyway. So the thought here is if we could get that done early on, we could save that information for anyone who then came back to the agency and wanted to go through the application process, and we could tie them to whatever that was. Also check at the time if there's any recent violations, but that would get rid of that particular two-part process. It would save the license holders that $50 that they would pay. The 27 plus, I forget what the actual amount is for the fingerprinting. That's a pass-through. That's not something the agency keeps. So doing this would have a revenue impact on the agency. And looking at the numbers over the last 5 years, Yearly money revenue collected for that is roughly around $45,000, which in putting it into context is just under 0.5% of the total revenue collected for the entire agency. So just so you have that understanding, if that is something that you'd like us staff to pursue at the legislature this year. And then the last one, the amendment to Chapter 411 of the Government Code, would give the agency the ability to fingerprint certain employees that deal with sensitive or confidential material. So we have people who handle credit card information, who handle money, and right now we don't have the authority to those individuals as they come in to determine if there's anything that would really concern us in hiring them and have them in that position. So that would be an ask for having that authority. It wouldn't be every employee; it'd be certain employees that would be we'd establish who that would be in terms of that. So that is all I have. This was like I said, the conversation that we had going forward with the executive committee. Just to give you guys an idea, this session is going to be different than any one we've had previously. We may have some, depending on the bandwidth of the legislature and the amount of things they're looking at, we may have some issues getting anybody to file any of this or sponsor any of it because it just may not be important enough to them to do so. Staff has met with Texas Realtors about some of this stuff. They have informed us that they don't necessarily have any issues with this as presented. They're looking at likely playing to a certain extent sort of on the, out of this particular process because they don't have any real desires, at least when we met with them, to amend any of our statutes going forward, but they didn't have any significant issues with any of the stuff that's laid out.
Can I speak to that just for a second?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I think this is a session where it's nice that we don't have anything that's emergent in nature, but that if there is an opportunity, we want to move forward as you see fit. So getting your feedback on these initiatives is important. And then what we intend to do is formulate these and to go to Texas Realtors and coordinate and kind of figure out what our next steps are, which could be, because of the unique nature of the session, a variety of things. It may be that there's no tolerance for cleanup type legislation. It could be that there are members of the legislature who want things like this that would likely not have great opposition. It could be a success for them. So we need to kind of constantly take the temperature of the legislature and all parties in this, but we're really just seeking to get your input on what you'd like us to move forward on if there is an opportunity to do so, and then we will poise ourselves for those opportunities. I think I jumped ahead of you, Chairman, and it looks like Commissioner Miller also has something to say. I'm sorry.
You're ready for my question. I'm kind of surprised, and is it a state thing that you all don't do background checks on employees? Because we have started doing that in our own company now, just as a matter of course for any, I think it's on executive levels, come to think of it.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We would need to get that specific statutory authority to do so. It gets a little bit complicated when you have government background checks. So we would go in, and I did this at my last agency. You need a change to Chapter 411, which is it allows DPS to release the results to the state agency. And you'll see in that chapter just a whole host of state agencies that have that specific authority. You want to be mindful as an agency, once you get that authority, the way you apply it. You want to do it for positions that really are handling information like the kind that Tony mentioned. Anyone who's got access to social security numbers, to credit card information, to the finances, things like that. But before we could move forward with that, we would need that statutory authority. It's one that a lot of agencies have. It's surprising how many don't have it, but it is one that I've worked on before that, if we're able to move forward on, I think would be really helpful in bringing some, I don't know, just some safe feelings for everyone. We haven't had anything that's prompted this other than, hey, maybe we should start looking into getting the authority to do this. Does that answer it?
Yes, it does. And personally, I think it's a good idea because you never know who's going to get into a file and suddenly have a social security number staring at them in the face. And then what do they do?
Yep,
So,
that's exactly right. I think that's it's true everywhere, and I think it would be really great if we could get this done.
Were there any other questions?
Stevens?
I thought I saw the chairman that he also had raised his hand, so I'm going to wait for my turn.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Stevens. You're fine.
Thank you. Question to see just about how long did it take in the other agency that you were working for, just approximate, to get that statutory authority?
We got it that session. So we went through, our government relations office and we got it through that session.
Thank you.
So,
and I have one more question, or rather a comment. Just that if for those of you, well, I mean, we have gone over some of these sunset recommendations, and just to caution us to keep in mind that we need to keep our independence in our thinking and in our decision making, so that it's not misinterpreted when some of these ideas are presented to associations, because that was one of the things that were brought up when changes were made to the agency, and just so that we continue moving forward. That's all I have. Thank you.
And Commissioner Stevens, I agree with you 100%. The reason why we wanted to speak to the associations is that the nature of this legislative session, we've been told with the bandwidth of the legislature, if there's anything that's remotely controversial, they're likely not going to be recommending moving forward on it. So we wanted to make sure up front before we pursued anything based on the input of the commission that there wasn't going to be any issues with anybody having problems with this, because then there wouldn't be any reason to move forward with it anyway.
I guess I have a question. I mean, is there a way that to make it fair and impartial, is there a way that we could bring these recommendations to the public in general and not just to the associations?
I'll speak to that just a minute, and I'm absolutely open to suggestions on that. I think that's what the legislative process offers is, a vetting process, and I think we could do significant work to publicize that. If there was an initiative that moved forward and, for instance, had a hearing, we would publicize that and encourage members of the public to weigh in on at the hearing and before, really. When legislation is filed, often when legislators consider whether or not to file something, one of the questions they ask is, what does the industry think of this? What opposition is there, so that they know just the lay of the land, what practically speaking. And the most obvious way of hearing from the industry is through the large trade association, of course, but it's certainly not the only way. And we would want to encourage members of the public to weigh in for a number of reasons, because that's part of the process that is, that we want to encourage, but it also helps us understand the consequences of the legislation in a way that we welcome. I hope that answers your question. Does it?
It does, and I thank you very much.
Tony, I would like, if you can, I'd like to back up to the fitness determination, 1101, 1102.
Yes, sir.
This actually came up this weekend where someone had requested a fitness determination, and while they're waiting on that, they have finished their courses and are going to send in the application. How does that, so if they do that, then the fingerprints will be ordered again, or how's that process work?
Well, there's no fingerprinting on the fitness determination. They answer some questions, general questions, and it's the look or review is based on their answers to those questions. So my guess is that they'll, as part of the process of getting an application, so they're going to have to get fingerprinted at some point. That could happen at the same time while they're waiting for some sort of report back on their fitness determination, and then it's the fingerprinting is going to be significantly more instructive because it's going to be an actual background check. That's not to say we don't do that, but it's not the same thing as having the FBI run the fingerprint. So yeah, Mike Malloy could maybe speak to how that happens if it overlaps. I'd say that's probably a rare occurrence, but it doesn't surprise me that it happens from time to time.
Okay.
But yeah, and I think as well, just so the commission knows, in talking about this particular issue, it's fairly staff intensive doing the fitness determination. That's not a reason one way or another. I mean, staff does it, but just thinking about it in terms of the whole context of the revenue generated, what it accomplishes, and the fact that there's still that additional fingerprinting that has to be done once you apply for the license.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Tony? Tony, anything else you have for us?
No, I mean, this is on the agenda tomorrow, basically to get sort of an official, affirmation from the commission members as to what they want us to move forward on. Obviously, because of the nature of the session, there will be actions and discussions that need to happen in between commission meetings. So, determining, is provided, and that information is and the communication between staff and the commissioners, that'll happen throughout the legislature. But part of the discussion tomorrow will be what to do sort of officially from the commission in between those meetings as well.
Okay, Commissioner Miller, do you have your hand up?
Yes, sir. And I'm sorry, I apologize to everybody for asking so many questions. It drives my husband mad. But anyway, on the, I think it was at broker responsibility training recently, they reported that 41% of the time of all the applications that we get, 41% have to be re-examined or go to enforcement for some sort of examination. So how often do those requesting the fitness determination go answer enough questions there that they don't have to be re-examined and held up in the regular licensing process? Did I ask that? Okay.
I think I understand what you're saying. Is in the fitness determination, the front end process, if you've done that work on the front end, can we save time on the back end? And I don't, if so, it's very minimal because it's basically a duplicative process. The first one is dependent upon honest reporting by someone who intends to apply, and they have no reason not to be honest, and they most often are honest. But then to receive the official criminal history background, that must be reviewed and a determination made. So it's duplicative. Also, I like your questions. It's very helpful to know what you're thinking.
And maybe it's because I've had enough agents and I've been in this business long enough that I've just had more exposure. And I've talked to Michael Malloy recently about it. if you've got somebody that you can send to, you know, they've admitted when they did an interview that they've had a problem in the past, and you say, okay, go get a fitness determination, or you send them there, and then they get that and they get clearance, then they haven't spent their $1,000 or $750 for the licensing classes, but then they go to the licensing classes, and then it's a 5 to 9 week duplication of process for enforcement to find something. And that's when everybody gets really angry and starts throwing things at the broker, saying, you didn't do enough for me. And it has been a problem. I've seen it numerous times, that there's just that big holdup. And I don't know the solution, I just know the problem. Sorry.
Well, Commissioner Miller, this would get that process started sooner. If they were able to do it prior to going through the application process, they could get that clearance. Again, when they apply, there need to be another look, but it wouldn't be to the extent, because we would have already been getting that information based on that. So I think that would likely shrink that time frame down considerably.
Mike also has his hand up. I bet he has something helpful to say.
Well, I mean, like you said, we're statutorily required to do fitness determinations. It's in Chapter 52, Chapter 53, excuse me. But I mean, sometimes it holds up. Most people are honest on fitness determinations, and the thing is, they do have to come back through the process. It's a lot of times it's just to clear them through. But if they get a provisional fitness determination, meaning, you know, there's some concerns, but you're going to get a, you know, probational license, that needs to come back to enforcement in order to issue that probationary license.
So
we take people. I mean, we get a lot of, you know, at least half of the complaints that we open are background history. So I think statistically, most people, you know, out there in the world, they've run across the police or had some sort of criminal episode. At least 25% of the population has that. So I think the commission's looked at the factors that we use in the crimes on a couple of bases. So that's we do review that, and it's my hope that we can, you know, streamline the process. This may do that a slightly bit, but it will still probably need to go back to enforcement to issue some sort of probationary license, or at least clear them if they pursue a full license, sales agent license.
So there's a question, are most of the time that it gets bogged down in enforcement, it's because the people didn't admit everything up front and didn't have all the forms in place and all that?
A lot of it, just for a person that doesn't do a fitness determination, we need the criminal documents and stuff, and it does take time for them to collect all that stuff. And then once it comes back, then we review it. Sometimes it's a back and forth process because I understand what we need and stuff. And that's where I think some of the ones that get pushed to 9 weeks sometimes, or, you know, the later, you know, but a lot of people, we get them cleared through like in a week or less sometimes. So it's those tricky ones that we've talked about, you know, over the past few months, that taking more attention to detail, and
those that somehow come to our company. That doesn't sound right.
It's not focused on you, ma'am. It happens. It happens to all kinds of people. So,
thank you,
Commissioner Leonard.
I think it might be focused on Century 21 in El Paso, but you know, I'll make a comment and then I have a question. You know, it is amazing how many people upon application seem to forget that they were in the county jail for 6 months last year. That's my comment. But Tony, my question is, would then that fingerprint that we have taken at the time of a fitness determination apply towards their application?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We would have a repository where we keep that information. Again, depending on the time, well, not depending, any time someone reapplies, we'd have to relook at it, but that information would be coming in, you know, much more quickly than having to get the fingerprints, have that set, and we'd have it at the time of application. So yes, it would be something we could relate
Good.
back to.
Good,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Okay, anything else? Any questions, Commissioner Stevens?
Yes, we've talked, you know, this has been brought up in the past about undoing the fund for the inspectors. And can we please go through the exercise? What would happen if the fund disappears? And I have specific questions. Would we be leaving the public on their own trying to collect solely to try to collect from the individual inspectors' insurance requirement?
Once the fund was depleted and
Yes.
all of that money gone, yes, ma'am, they would go through their, they would have to go to the inspector to get money from their insurance company. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Okay.
Commissioner Leonard? Okay, Tony, back to you.
Well, that's really all I have. If there's not any other questions, again, tomorrow it'll be on the agenda for you to take some sort, formal action on any of these items that you do want, you do want staff to move forward on, or at least attempt to move forward on. And then, again, a discussion about, how we deal with the process in between commission meetings as well.
And let me add a little bit to that. Tomorrow, this will be on the agenda for the regular commission meeting, and we're probably going to have an ask that the ones that we decide we want to move forward, if there is an opportunity in this session, it will be a very fluid session. There might be a very small time frame in order to get stuff done, and we might ask that the executive committee have the ability to say yes on the ones we've approved if the opportunity arises, but we can talk about that tomorrow, vet that tomorrow. Also remember that we need help of trade organizations, whether it's a title, whether it's a realtors, because we can get information, but we cannot lobby at the Capitol. Okay, so just FYI, this will be on the agenda tomorrow to determine which way we're going to go.
And if I can add one more thing, I didn't want to interrupt you if you weren't done, but I just wanted to add one more thing. Just so everybody knows that this is the list of things that we've discussed about sort of us pushing forward if we can, but there's liable to be other bills that we're tracking. And obviously, as we did last session, I will keep all of the commission members apprised of where those bills go. There are bills filed every session that we track that we weren't on the front end of, but we're tracking them to make sure, because they do impact either the agency in general, as maybe all occupational agencies. They may impact TREC specifically, or they may have some impact on the industry, which is of course important to things that we do. So that will be the process going forward as well. I just wanted to make sure that this small universe of subject matters wasn't that people didn't think that was the only thing we were going to be looking at.
Tony, if I would like to also add, if possible, maybe look at the limits on the recovery fund, the 50,000 per transaction, 100,000 per licensee. I think the last time that was moved was like 1992. And okay. I don't know if there'll be an opportunity, but that might be something we might want to look at.
So you're talking about specifically about the real estate, not the inspector, the real estate.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
How about we add that to the discussion for tomorrow, but or even right now, but in the meantime, if there's any of these items that cause you heartburn or that you think doesn't fall within what an agency should consider, please voice that, because just as Chair Kestner said, we don't lobby. We are in a very good position of knowing our statutes and rules and being able to identify changes that would make the agency more effective or improve, which is very natural in the legislative process for agencies to do. There's typically kind of a, what we call, sometimes that implies that it's not substantive. These are substantive changes, but it's for purposes of kind of cleaning up or improving how we do business or how we support the industry or regulate and enforce.
Okay, anything else for agenda item number 5? I'm going to go to agenda item number 8. And Bob, if you'll kind of run traffic, I need to step away. We had an issue. I need to step away for about 1 minute. So if y'all will excuse me for 1 moment.
Okay, well, I have to bring up agenda item number 8 on my screen here. And see what we're doing.
This is our update on social media, which will be provided by Christine Anderson. So she is off mute and ready to go.
Take it away, Christine.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today, guys. That was a great discussion, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about legislative session. And we're going to pivot hard to social media and the website. So I am presenting today for you some just general top-down information about our website statistics, usage, social media engagement. We know as staff that one of the priorities of this commission is to ensure excellent communication and engagement with our license holders. And this information may give you some insight as to how we're engaging with our license holders using our website as well as social media to do so. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. And if anyone has questions throughout this, go ahead and just raise your hand. I actually have 2 screens, so I'm able to see if people have questions as we go. So coming up first, I have website analytics. So this is using Google Analytics to look at the usage of our website. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger for you. Can everyone see the information here? Okay. So as you can see here, this is a year-over-year comparison from this time last year to this time this year. We have an increase of users over this time last year of 31%. And something else that I wanted to highlight here was the increase in page views. From my digging through the deep end of the analytics, I believe that this is a good sign of people going through the website and digging through and finding information they want to find, reading what they need to read, and being directed to better the information as they go through the website. And you can see here that we continue to just trend on the same amount of users, but we are increasing. And sorry, Google Analytics does automatically add this information about language at the bottom in case you were confused, and most of our users do use English as how they access our website, or speak English as they access the website. So this is a general audience overview showing the number of users on our website at 3 million, or just under 3.5 million. I'm not sure if this is making sense to you guys, so if you have questions, again, just let me know. I want to make sure I'm not taking up too much of your time. And here, something I added to this report from the last time that I gave this report to the commission is the comparison of desktop, mobile, and tablet usage on our website. one of the things that we did when we redesigned the website was we added, or we designed it with the responsive design in mind, so that a user could access our website mobile and on a tablet, same as they could using their desktop. And you can see that more and more people are using both mobile and tablet to access our website. So that does continue to be important, although the majority of our license holders or the people accessing our website are accessing through a desktop. So just thought I would highlight that for you guys. Moving on to GovDelivery. So just to give you guys a little bit of a reminder, GovDelivery is the tool we use to deliver all of our messaging. So all of our emails and reminders of upcoming meetings, that kind of stuff, all goes through a tool called GovDelivery. And this tool was purchased, and I forget, I think it's about 6 years ago now, 7 years ago now, we started using GovDelivery as our main tool for delivering messaging. And we purchased it because we were using just a list from our database and sending out, and we would be flagged as spam and stuff like that. So this tool allows us to ensure delivery of our email messages to the audience that we're trying to communicate with. So this is a review from November of 2019 to October of 2020. You can see we continue to increase our users from last year to this year. We're adding 55,000 or almost 56,000 users to this tool. That means that, you know, it could be members of the public, it could be license holders. We're continuing to add people using and wanting communications from us. And then another key highlight here that I wanted to point out to you guys is this engagement rate. This is extraordinarily high for industry standards, which I believe is somewhere around, like, a great engagement rate is usually about 30%. So the fact that 51%, almost 52% of our messages are opened or clicked on when they're sent is huge. That means that we're communicating information to the people that want to receive it. And I think that's a really good feedback for the commission on how we're currently sending out messaging. And then another report, I'm sorry, I just lost my computer just glitched. I want to make sure I'm looking at the right thing. This is another just visual representation of the increase of subscribers. The percentage growth here is 16.4%. Here you can see the effectiveness. Again, we're continuing to increase our effectiveness of our messaging. And one other thing I wanted to point out is one of the benefits of using this GovDelivery tool is we automatically are enrolled in their network that they allow. So if I'm somebody that's in the city of Fort Worth, for example, and I'm signing up for communications from the city of Fort Worth, a supplemental you may be interested in communications from would come up, and we would that user would be able to sign up for communications that way. You can see that we actually are getting quite a bit of traffic from those referral, that referral network, people signing up for information about the Real Estate Commission from other agencies' websites. And these are our top referral resources: the Workforce Commission, the Department of Family and Protective Services, and the Office of the Governor. So I just thought you guys might find that interesting. Moving on.
Christine, it
sorry.
looks like Commissioner Miller has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. And I even boasted that I could see the question. Sorry about that, Commissioner.
Are you kidding? Sorry, I'm asking so many questions. I keep saying that.
It's fine. That's what today's for, right?
I've been wondering, as I go through these reports before every meeting, that y'all are doing so well on answering emails and answering phones now. And I wondered which one is more, which one's cheaper to answer or easier for everybody? Would you rather have people emailing the commission? Because I think that social media is a way to promote that. and or big billboard
Right.
kind of things on the website itself. You know, you can also use email, because I still run into people and if they're still mad about TREC, I'm able to correct what they think, that, oh, it's a 20-minute wait, I'm not going to call, I hate TREC, I'm scared of them, because that's the way I lived for 50 years. So it's getting so much better. How can you promote email if email faster, better, easier?
Well, I think our current, and some of that might be good for our communications division, Robert Hood, to answer, the director of communications in that division, because he does respond to emails and calls, his team does. But as far as how we're promoting best ways to communicate with the agency, we actually regularly remind people in messaging, like, you can sign up for our newsletter and receive communications that way. You can email or call us. I don't think we've necessarily done a cost benefit analysis on which one's better or faster or easier. I think what our promotion tone tends to be is go at us the best way that's easiest for you, and communicate with us in that way, because we're doing a great job across the board now. And so if your best way is via Twitter because you prefer a Twitter feed to get information from us, that's fine. We're going to update you that way. But if you want, and people do ask us questions that way, or if the best way is to pick up the phone and call, then that's the best way to do so for you.
And Mr. Hood is off mute and ready to weigh in.
Thank you, Chelsea, and thank you, Christine. Yes, it really depends on the customer and the type of questions they have. If it's some type of a detailed question they want to respond to right away, we do prefer that they call. But if it's a general question about anything, and we can handle it through email, we can do it that way. But it really depends on the customer and the type of question they have, and then their preferred method of contacting us.
And I know that we as an agency have really shifted over the last couple of years of trying to communicate the same information in news in multiple different channels so that the recipients receive it the way that they want it. So especially when we're pushing communications out, whether they have a question, that's up to them how they ask that. But we kind of create a video and an article, and then we share it on social media and on the website and a newsletter format. That way then, you know, however you prefer to receive communications from the agency, you can get it that way. Does that help answer your question?
Definitely. They just they need jingles or something, because realtors don't read. I mean, it's a common problem.
Yeah. And the good thing is, and something I'm going to show you guys in a little bit, is our engagement on social media continues to increase. And I think a lot of people like the videos we've been creating, the online sessions where we kind of do follow-ups with some of our directors or at the chair or whomever, where they can kind of engage with us that way. And that's where we'll have great conversations with our license holders and kind of get them to realize, like, hey, we're here to help answer the questions. So in case if you have anything more you want to ask, Commissioner, I'm happy to answer anything else, but I'll move on. So over the last year, we've sent 145 messages and posted them. Again, you can see that they are automatically actually posted to social media when I send them out, for the most part, unless they're, you know, private messages that don't need to go out to the public, like something that went to staff or something like that. That's why there might be a discrepancy there. So I only highlighted Facebook because I just thought that it might be helpful to look at our biggest engagement, social media engagement platform. We do have a Twitter, and we do use YouTube, but Facebook seems to be the place where we've had great growth and great interaction. So I just thought I would focus on that today. But if you have questions on any of the other platforms, by all means ask. So this is from the beginning of 2020 to when I ran this report on the 2nd. You can see here that we continue to have an increase in likes over time. We continue to increase that to 11,614 people following or liking us. That means that somebody, you know, when you scroll through and you click I like them, that means that you're kind of saying that you like us and that you're also wanting to get information from us. So I thought I would share that. And then again, over here, you can see this is our followers. Those are the people that actively engage with our page, follow for updates, and they'll receive the updates in their news feed as they get that. And that's over 20,000 now. Okay, so that's it. I just wanted to keep it really not in the weeds for you guys, make it as easy as possible to kind of understand and digest it. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer anything else.
Questions? All right, thanks, Christine.
Sure, no problem.
Agenda item number 9, regarding the online comment form for our agency rulemaking. Damon Crimson will present this.
I'm going to join Damon in this. Damon, are you here? I didn't actually. Oh, there you are. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to intro this just a little bit and then we'll walk you through it. This will not take long. But this is something that we have been working on in GC that is really exciting. Currently, when we have rules out for proposal, we just have people send us emails to the GC inbox, and it's not the best system. It's not entirely clear sometimes which rules people are talking about, and it is not. I don't think it's the most consumer-friendly way of submitting comments on these rules changes. And so I will especially note that, you know, we've had these broker lawyer ones where we've had, you know, over 100 comments. That means over 100 emails sent to one inbox. And I don't think we've lost any, but, you know, you never know because you're getting all these emails. And then on the back end, Amber has to take every one of those emails and combine it into one single PDF. And then she has to sort them by, if they cover multiple rules, she ends up having to highlight which rules it's covering here and then include it again, you know, 100 pages later. So it's a process. And I will give Amber full credit that she has some really great ideas. And this is one she brought to me. She said, wouldn't it be cool if we had an online comment form? And I say, yes, let's do it. So IT being incredibly helpful and way faster than any IT I have ever dealt with. I hope no one that I've worked with before is listening to this. They got on it. And so this is a draft. We're still in process. We're still working on it. But I wanted to show you guys what we've been working on. I think this will be really beneficial for our license holders and members of the public. It should be easy for them to fill out. We've tried to make it really user friendly. And then on the back end, I think it will be incredibly helpful to staff, and it will help us to be able to collect statistics and also organize advisory committee and commission materials in a uniform way that makes it a lot easier for you to read. So Damon's got it pulled up here. This looks like it's live, but it's not. So if you were a member of the public and you, let's say you have a comment on one of the broker lawyer forms, you would come to this page and you can see, Damon, you mind scrolling up just a little bit? I know you're filling it in. Sorry, up. So you'll see there's like a little blurb here that tells you, you know, you can submit the comments here. We'll flesh this out a little bit. Now Damon is acting like he is a model citizen who's providing us comment. So he puts in his name, first name, last name, his email address. And then here you'll see there's a drop-down box. For some reason, I didn't see it. Did you guys see him select that, or did it just kind of happen? Yeah, for some reason, I don't know if this is just happening on my end, but basically, if you didn't see it, I'll explain it. It's a drop-down box and it lists every rule that we have out for proposal. Oh, it's opening in another window that isn't showing is what Amber's telling me. So what you would see is it would drop down. It will give you all the rules that we have out for proposal, and you select one, and it tells you, please limit your comment to one rule per comment, so that way we don't have the big merge of all the rules. There we go. So that's a great one to pick. And then you'll see there's a rule summary. This is taken from our website. This is like the longest rule we have, of course. And then you can also click on that link, will take you to where it is in the Texas Register. So you can take a look. The longest rule description with the shortest rule because it's a contract form. So that takes you there if you wanted to pull it up and look at it. And then you can scroll down and you can put in, you know, this is the greatest rule change I've ever seen. Thank you. Or, you know, who thought of this? This is crazy. Hopefully no one ever says that, but you never know. So this is great. And if there's anyone who, from there, they can submit it. But if there's anyone who has, sometimes you'll have folks that, especially on these contract forms, they'll have supplemental information. They'll have drafts that they think you should use. So we've got a thing here that says you can upload those, you can email those later. So this rule comment says, this is great, please move forward. Person submits preview and they get an idea of what it looks like. Okay, that's what I wanted to say, submit comment. And then you can go back if you want to do more. You will get this thank you note, and you will also get an email sending you confirmation that your comment has been received. That's another thing that on our end, we don't have an automatic reply because it's just built into that GC inbox. So here everyone will know, there'll be no need to follow up with a, hey, did you get my comment? If they're not sure we got their comment, they'll get an automatic response. And then if you will look, Damon, do you want to show the inside? I'm going to show you very briefly what happens on the inside for us. So what I'm showing you right now is only available to staff. But this is basically where we take the data that we receive from all those comments and it sorts and organizes it for us. Yes, so this is pretty neat. I won't do too much with it. But what we're able to do is we're able to sort by rule number. So these are all the comments we have, right? These are all fake comments. You can sort it by rule number. And then you can select all of the ones that apply to what, 531.18. Or however you do it, Damon, you're better at this than I am. So there, and then you can push, you can select them and you can push generate PDFs, and it will basically create your commission materials and your advisory committee materials, because it will turn it into one consistent document that has every single comment, every rule that it applies to. Commissioner Miller, do you have a question?
Always. John Doe Realtor does not pay any attention to the fact that it's 22 TAC 531.18. We don't relate, and I shouldn't speak for everybody, but they can contradict me anytime they want. We don't pay any attention to that. And so is there a way that we can say, instead of proposed rule, can we say proposed contract 1 to 4 family, or something that makes it easy?
So can you see this? Can you see this where it has like in parentheses the 1 to 4 family?
Yes.
Does that help?
Definitely.
Okay. Then yes.
Got to say that, or we're not gonna.
Yeah,
We'll
it's going to
throw our
say
hands up
that.
and go,
Right, and I will say we've got probably our most complicated ones at the moment in here because they're the ones that we have out there. But like if you'll see that top one, it's got the title of consumer information, which should cue people in. If you think we need more descriptions, we can do that. We usually just take the title of the rule, so schedule of administrative penalties would be on there. In fact, it probably is on there down at the bottom. But this should have it so each specific addendum title, each contract title will be in there.
I know it creates more problems for Amber or whoever ends up sorting these, but if I just say trouble with appraisals, local appraisals, or something like that, can you all then shove it into the slot that you have there that it would be addressed in?
So I think, and Amber or Damon, speak up, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what we're doing is that if it doesn't show, like we're gonna have a little pop-up that says, if you don't see the item you want to comment on, email the GC inbox. So that'll still be a place where someone can go, because you're right, we get comments, we get a lot of comments on Broker Lawyer where they are wanting us to look at things that they're not currently looking at. And so we will have a pop-up, a direction that says, if you don't see the rule you want to talk about, email your comments to general.counsel. That's right, Damon and Amber? I'm not making that up.
Yeah, that's correct. I think it's not in there yet, but the idea was that perhaps we put in another slot here just for another, you know, so a person could, if they didn't see exactly what they were looking for here, there would be a slot to pick other, and then they would then be directed to a message saying, hey, you need to email that to general counsel.
Yeah. And so if you guys have, I mean, we've still got a little ways to go on this. If you have any comments, I mean, that's right, that's super helpful. If you have anything that you think, you know, people in your industry would prefer, anything along those lines, please feel free to weigh in on them either right now, or you can send it to Amber and myself, because we're trying to work through all of those questions of like, hey, does anyone know what we're talking about when we reference this? What's the easiest way to do this? We'll still accept comments at the general counsel inbox level. This will just make it easier. There's a lot of state agencies that use online comment forms. I think organizationally, this will just be so great for us. We can throw it all into a spreadsheet. We'll be able to, you know, I know on these Broker Lawyer comments, we had 124 on this last round, and just being able to pull the statistics on it is really helpful of like, hey, at this point we have 73, it looks like 24 of those are neutral, 30 of those are pro, you know, just whatever that looks like. We'll be able to do that without sort of scrolling through all these different emails and trying to figure it out. So I think it's, you know, kudos to Amber. I'm really excited about this. It might be kind of a nerdy thing to be excited about, but I am. And again, I'll close with, unless anybody has any questions, thank you so much to IT. This just, it looks better than I ever imagined it would. So that was quick.
Any questions? Again, great work on agenda item number 9 on those online comments. If you've been following the comments on the broker lawyer committee on the contracts, you realize what a game changer this is going to be. Okay, I'm going to move on to agenda item number 10, and will be General Counsel Burgess.
Okay, I'm going to share. Oh no, Amber's going to share it, even better. Okay. So this is something that we've all been working toward, which is the advisory committee selection process. This is a draft document, but we, in the past, my understanding is that the chair really covered the committee selection process. And since I've been here, there's been the move to change that and to create these selection committees to sort through applications and figure out nominations to move forward for the vacant slots on the advisory committees. And so what we've done here is we've put together, this is an internal guidance document, but I wanted you guys to see it. It's been a little bit of a work in progress, so we got some good insight with the broker responsibility working group. That one was a little bit different because that was a whole new group, so that undertaking was huge. And then most recently we have had to make, well, the selection committees have gotten together to make recommendations that you're going to see tomorrow for ESAC and Inspector Committee, and then one broker responsibility working group. So through all of that, we have developed more of a process. And I am hoping to continue to streamline that process so it is not such a burden on the commissioners who volunteer for these positions. So on the selection committees, we currently have it made up. You have 3 commissioners. You have 1 public member on each one. And that number 3 allows for some insight without getting into quorum issues. If we have someone who wants to sit in or join in, if the chair wants to look in, they can do that. And what we as staff can do is coordinate the kickoff. So you're in a meeting, you're in commission meeting, and you volunteer to serve on the ESAC selection committee because they have, 6 appointments coming up. What will happen is staff has an application that they've created. We ask for resumes and cover letters. The plan right now is to go ahead and kick off the application process even ahead of the selection committee itself being selected, if possible. So if the selection committee is going to be selected in May to make a recommendation for August, we as staff would like to go ahead and start soliciting applications ahead of that, so that once that selection committee is named, we can get you all of the applications. And that way it's not such a, you have 3 weeks to sort through these applications. And if you're on multiple selection committees, that means you're attending all these meetings. We're trying to make that an easier process. So we'll get all of the announcements out. We'll collect all of the applications. We sort through, we make spreadsheets. We sort them into packets. We send that to the selection committee. Selection committee reviews on its own. We organize a meeting of that selection committee. It's been virtual right now. They come to, and I imagine it will remain as such. They come together with their list based on the packets they've received, and they come up with their recommendations. So for example, on ESAC, you had 6 open slots. I'm going to make this up: 3 educator and 3 license holder members. So they picked those folks. They went back and forth. They went through the applications. They came up with their 6. They also picked some alternates, which you vote on as well, so that in the event we have somebody who suddenly has to resign their position, you've already got an alternate process in place, so you don't have to get that, start everything all over again, and everyone's had the opportunity to look at it. It's also going to allow these alternate members to stay on top of it, to be aware of what's going on with those committees. And so you'll see that at this next meeting, right, where I think it's agenda item 4, we will bring forward the list of recommendations for ESAC and Inspector Committee, including alternates, and that all those recommendations that you're going to vote on are the result of this process right here. So it's a little bit of a summary of the process, but it's giving us some clear direction on what's the best way to do this. It involves a lot of commissioner input and interaction, which I know the chair was interested in broadening that. And this also goes through, we know when we have folks that are coming up. because it's in rule. So this kind of goes to, you've got ESAC, you've got inspectors, and you've got broker lawyer coming up. So does that, anybody have any questions on that? It seems to be working. Anyone who's participated so far has given us a lot of input on that. Commissioner Miller is our current MVP. With, I think Commissioner Harker is in second place on that, actually. But it's just been, it's been a process, and I think we've developed it, and I think we're in a place now where we can really expedite it and not have it be a crunch time between committee meetings, and give you guys more time to really thoroughly review those applications. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Questions or comments? Okay, thank you. And again, all this will be work in progress. Agenda item number 11, request for potential future workshop agenda items. I think budget would definitely is something that we're going to look at in depth more and more. Any other potential agenda items for workshops? See somebody's hands up. Maybe
Commissioner,
not.
it's Commissioner Miller.
Yes, Commissioner Miller.
I just wanted to say that one or two of the ones who chose and went over those, you call me an MVP, and it's hardly that. It's just nobody else would volunteer, and I thought it's got to be done, so I was willing to do it. So I'd love for there to be more volunteers next time.
I totally agree. That way we don't have to volunteer. Okay.
What? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Can you please explain what NB, the term that it was, the
Oh, I was just saying that Commissioner Miller has volunteered. I think she's been on all three that we've done so far. But I think as she just mentioned, she volunteered for the last one because no one else was.
Thank you.
Okay. If you think of something for workshop agenda, let us know. We need to talk about future workshop and commission meetings, and I would like to add, we'll talk about some dates tomorrow to get proposed and in the book. You know, these workshops virtually, we got a lot of information and we had some discussion. We've done this in less than 3 hours. I really think, you know, if we can be in person in February and the building be back open, this would be an all-day workshop. I think there would be more participation, more input, more vetting. But I'm truly grateful that we got all the information we got from staff today. I think that puts us as a commission a whole lot better position to make decisions and move forward. And I know the workshop online is not the best of the best, but believe me, I think it's a lot better than we've had in the past. And I look forward to sitting there, and especially when, you know, TJ brought up the budget, you know, to vet that and the recovery fund. I think all around the table, it'd be a whole lot easier than virtually. But I want to thank everybody for taking their time to, you know, spend 3 hours today on this virtually, getting the information. I think it'll give us a better idea tomorrow when we start dissecting. So we'll talk about dates for 2021 tomorrow and get them set. Vanessa, what am I missing on that? And
sorry. I can go ahead and pull up
the calendar.
The calendar. Are you seeing this? Amber, is this what I'm supposed to be sharing?
Yes, that first line there of when our normal meeting times are.
Okay.
Except, of course, the February one, we can't meet on that Monday due to it being a state holiday.
Right. And I think so this is traditionally when these happen. And there's a little bit of an adjustment in May for graduation. But in your materials for tomorrow, I think there's like an actual calendar, correct, Amber?
Yes, there's an actual calendar, and if you want to choose the dates that are listed here in this line, that's fine, or not. But yeah, there's a calendar in there.
So yeah, so you guys can look at that. This is just sort of helpful. This is when it's traditionally done, the second Monday of November, February, and August, and then the first Monday of May. And Amber's right, the February of this year, it's a holiday that Monday, but that doesn't mean you couldn't push it to the Tuesday, Wednesday, or however you want to do it. But yes, you guys will actually have dates and vote on that tomorrow, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a preview of how it usually looks.
It would be good to know for our February meeting when the association has planned their November meeting. And will it be virtual? Will it be in person? Scott, do you have those dates?
I do not have them in front of me. I think on the calendar we're going to look at tomorrow, it's actually marked when the winter meetings are also.
Okay.
I saw that somewhere, Bob. I can't remember where.
Okay.
But they do coincide. Anything else on the dates? I would like to entertain a motion to excuse Commissioner Williams. He did contact us. Life happened at work, so I would entertain a motion to excuse his absence.
I'll move that we excuse Commissioner Williams' absence.
This is TJ, second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Leonard, a second from Commissioner Turner. All opposed? None opposed. Motion will carry. Anything else before we adjourn? Chelsea, Vanessa?
Rita's hand was up.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Stevens?
Sorry, my mistake.
Okay, if there's nothing else before we adjourn, I would like to, we need someone to do a pledge tomorrow, and since Abby Lee is the new staff person, I thought she might want to do that.
I'll be happy to.
Okay.
Her face looks completely delighted right now.
Yeah, that's what you call voluntold. Thank you. All right. If there's nothing else, I'll motion to adjourn.
Thanks for this. We'll see y'all tomorrow, same time.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Adjourn at 12:58 p.m.
Oh, that means my promise was accurate. Less than 3.